Chapter 4. The Echo of Vision. The moment Calderon stepped forward, the wall of dissolving threads closed behind him, his violin still undulating with the final note he had played. He felt weightless, as though untethered from gravity for a brief, disorienting moment. The sense of touch vanished, and he was suspended in an expanse where time and space folded in on themselves. Then, just as suddenly, his senses returned. He found himself in a chamber that defied understanding. The ground beneath him felt insubstantial, a surface both there and not. It was like stepping onto a hefty cloud that refused to give way. The walls stretched far beyond sight, morphing and shifting in impossible ways. Craggy voids formed and disappeared, edges dissolving into gaseous trails, while distant arcs of color glimmered tenderly, echoes of nebulae caught in some astral tide. It was a place of mystery, a puzzle waiting to be solved. The air contained a scent mildly like herbal sweetness intertwined with the sharpness of stone dust, underscored by a smoky tang that evoked smoldering wood and far-off, untraceable fires, a storm mingling with something old and forgotten. It was a scent that invoked disquiet and fascination, urging Calderon to move forward. Above him was no ceiling, only a vast emptiness dotted with faint pinpricks of light that flickered erratically as if they were unsure of their existence. The chamber hummed, not musically, but with a symphony of sounds that defied categorization. Low rumbles, sharp clicks, and bursts of static that seemed to ripple outward in waves. The very fabric of this place emitted a language of its own. At the heart of the chamber hovered a shape. Despite searching his memory, nothing similar came to mind. It was cloud-like, yet not soft. Its edges, wisping and trailing like vapor, met the air. Within its depths, faint bursts of light sparked and flickered, forming patterns too fleeting to follow. As he approached, the cloud seemed to exhale, releasing a faint puff of cool mist that carried the same herbal sweetness of the air, a transformation in progress, a metamorphosis about to unfold. Calderon paused, the violin steady in his hands. The cloud shifted subtly, responding to his presence with a soundless quiver. It pulsed outward, then drew back, inviting him closer. Tentatively, he stepped forward and raised the violin. An eerie tone emerged from the cloud itself before he could play. It wasn't a melody, but a presence, a sound and vibration that spoke to his marrow. Then, as though the tone had unlocked something within him, the melody began. It was the same melody his grandmother had played years ago, unnervingly familiar, laced with sophisticated complexity. Calderon felt its notes wrap around him, and as they did, the cloud shifted. Light within its depths swirled, coalescing into a form. At first, the shape was indistinct, but it gradually became an image of Calderon himself, not as he was, but as he imagined himself to be. His features were refined, his posture assertive, his presence exuding effortless confidence. This Calderon played the violin flawlessly, the music flowing from him as if he and the instrument were one. This version of himself filled him with awe and pleasure, yet also contained a hint of uneasiness. The melody shifted. and the idealized representation of himself merged into swirling light before reforming. This time, the cauldron before him was not aspirational, but authentic. His shoulders sagged under invisible weight. His hands faltered on the violin strings, and his expression was one of hesitation, chiseled with faint lines of regret. The music wavered, tentative, and the notes were no longer smooth, but fractured. Calderon clenched his hands around the violin, the bow trembling slightly. The cloud pulsed again, sending another puff of mist spiraling toward him, and as it touched his skin, the visions fractured. The space around him dissolved into a sequence of memories on a mist screen. He was a child, running through a field of wildflowers, laughter bursting from him in unrestrained joy. The sun was high, the air sweet, and he felt weightless. He was a teenager, practicing the violin in his dimly lit room, his face determined. Each note was precise and calculated, as though effort alone could build perfection. He was on a stage, older now, and the audience before him was a faceless mass. He played, and though his movements were exact, the sound was hollow, the music an echo of something lost. Then came the darkest vision. Calderon stood alone in a void, the violin in his hands. But as he tried to play, the strings snapped, one by one, until only silence remained. His hands began to dissolve into smoke, the violin slipping from his grasp. He screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the void, leaving only an empty, suffocating silence. The visions receded, and Calderon gasped, his breath shallow. He staggered back. The cloud shifted one final time, its glow dulling but still present. The weight of the visions, the burden of self-discovery was heavy on his shoulders. What is this place? He asked aloud, his voice breaking. The cloud released a final puff of mist, and with it came the faintest whisper. It is you. As you were, as you wish to be, as you may become. The words sank into him like stones. Calderon lowered the violin, his hands trembling. The labyrinth was unraveling him, stripping him of every layer, every facade, until only the barest truth remained. He turned his gaze inward, his mind churning. The Calderon he had seen, the confident, idealized version, was nothing more than an illusion, a mask worn to hide his fear of inadequacy. But the second version, the hesitant, uncertain Calderon, was no better. It reflected weight carried and the choices made to bury his regrets rather than oppose them. Who am I? The question burned in his mind, and for the first time he faced it without turning away. He was not the boy in the field, the hollow performer, or the figure disintegrating into smoke. He was all of them, fractured pieces of a whole he had yet to fully embrace. The weight of the violin in his hands continued to ground him when nothing else could. He raised his head and steadied his breath. The path emitted a faint glow. The ground itself urged him onward, and he knew there was no turning back. Through was the only way.